Of Keir Starmer's attacks on freedom of speech?
It's exactly what you'd expect from someone who holds his position. It's nothing new. I think in the UK, things have gone farther in the UK on the, what would you say, with regards to threats to freedom of expression than maybe anywhere in the West, although Canada is doing its best to play catch-up, maybe New Zealand. It's in keeping with his ethos. It's not surprising and it's appalling.
Keir Starmer probably thought he'd face a controlled debate. But the moment Jordan Peterson entered, full of relentless logic, caffeinated energy, and razor-sharp language, the room shifted completely. Within minutes, Starmer looked lost, like an AI asked to define socialism off-script. It wasn't politics anymore, it was part TED Talk, part intellectual cage match, with Peterson using ideas like a steel chair, dismantling assumptions instead of sparring. Watching him systematically unravel a politician's worldview was hypnotic, while Starmer clung to the fade of leadership with the charisma of a fax machine and the conviction of lukewarm tea, only for Peterson, more a force of reasoning than a debater, to cut through it all like a merciless professor showing how not to lead.
Does it surprise you that Keir Starmer doesn't want a national inquiry into grooming gangs?
No, that doesn't surprise me. It's exactly what you'd expect. I've got an article coming out in the Telegraph this week about exactly that issue, and so it's appalling. Well, there's hard questions that need to be asked about and answered about multiculturalism, and no one's willing to have the discussion, but it needs to be had, obviously. And I think there's maybe a way forward with regards to the signatories of the Abraham Accord, to have a serious discussion about how Islamic fundamentalism might be brought under control and some vision of how...
Imagine Britain as a ship tossed in a violent storm, waves smashing the hull, the crew in full panic, the compass spinning wildly, and at the helm is Captain Starmer, squinting at a soaked manual titled Generic Leadership for Dummies, endlessly trimming sails, but never charting a course. Confusing caution for competence. On solid ground, Jordan Peterson stands calm, precise, and relentlessly logical, shouting over the chaos the one question no one aboard dares to ask. Does anyone on this ship even know how to read a map?
About the state of morality in Britain that grooming gangs were taking place for more than 3 decades.
No, that's what happens when a naive, demented, and self-righteous multiculturalism takes the upper hand, and when the upper class is willing to sacrifice the poor to their own moral presumptions. Yeah, it's appalling in every possible way. So, and it indicates, it's indicative of something truly hideous beneath the surface, not only on the rape gang side, but obviously on the side of the authorities that conspired to keep it a secret. Dreadful.
Starmer's struggle with political identity isn't temporary, it defines his entire approach. One moment he presents himself as a progressive champion, the next he's polishing his centrist credentials like a prized briefcase, pivoting so often it seems less like strategy and more like a rehearsed performance. This isn't adaptability or cunning, it's confusion masquerading as prudence, uncertainty dressed up as balance, and a style of leadership that mistakes endless motion for real direction.
What's your prediction for the UK election? You've been quite scathing about Sir Keir Starmer, but the polls show at the moment, certainly, if the election happens in the autumn, it seems likely, that he is heading to some kind of victory. What do you think that would mean for Britain? And do the Conservatives have any chance of stopping that?
I think it'll be catastrophic. I believe that Labour, like the socialist parties in Canada, is absolutely overwhelmed by the diversity, equity, and inclusivity, victimizer narrative types.
Jordan Peterson, a man who reduces human behaviour to strict rules and demands accountability at every turn, would likely view Starmer's constant repositioning as a textbook case of avoiding reality. If clarity were currency, Starmer would be bankrupt, presiding over policies that sound reassuring but crumble under scrutiny, especially on the economy, where his budgets read like sterile spreadsheets instead of a coherent vision, full of talk about growth yet devoid of a roadmap, relying on optimism, fuzzy figures, and minor tax tweaks that quietly squeeze the middle class while letting billionaires off easy, like rearranging furniture on a sinking ship and calling it progress. Peterson's insistence on competence exposes Starmer's central flaw with brutal precision: a lack of conviction. Starmer governs with the calm efficiency of a dentist's waiting room, neat, controlled, and utterly lifeless, leaving the economy not moving forward, but trapped amid broken calculators and endlessly recycled slogans.
That even if Starmer himself has any sense, which I doubt, the probability that his minions will lay waste to the UK it's certain in my estimation. There's so much behind the scene tyrannizing going on in the name of hypothetical utopian progress that it's almost unimaginable. I mean, the CCTVs in the ULEZ zones are a great example of that, and everything that's happened in London under Sadiq Khan, who's like poster boy for ideologically addled globalist utopians. And if the Labour gets in, and I can understand why the citizens of the UK are hungry for a change, if Labour gets in, it's like Venezuela, here we come.
On cultural issues, Starmer's fear of offending anyone has drained Labour of all flavour and definition, leaving it cautious, muted, and hollow. Instead of taking a stand, he seems to think silence is a governing strategy. Yet ignoring cultural debates isn't leadership, it's denial. This stands in stark contrast to Jordan Peterson's insistence on honesty, clarity, and a firm moral framework, while Starmer acts as if speaking softly and saying almost nothing will make his party's moral compass quietly disappear somewhere in Camden. Adding to this is his growing appetite for control. Once hailed as a defender of internal democracy, he now runs Labour like a private members' club for cautious bureaucrats, with candidate selections offering as much grassroots input as a staged election, dissenters swiftly sidelined, and the left wing erased so thoroughly it's as if it never existed.
And Starmer's posturing with regards to adolescence is only going to make that worse. It's bad psychology, and it's not only that, it's also oriented not to help young people, but to make Mr. Starmer feel a hell of a lot more secure in the idiot presumptions of his dimwit progressivism. So, and that's really the fundamental aim. It's like, how can we show we're right? And if we have to burn some young people on the pyre to make sure that our moral presuppositions can remain intact and our faith in our idiocy remains unchallenged, then we might as well teach kids using a Netflix series on adolescence.
Contrast this with Jordan Peterson's commitment to honest institutions and balanced power, because Starmer isn't leading a movement, he's managing a brand. Not an inspiring one, but a dull corporate operation built on loyalty schemes, risk assessments, and endless PowerPoint slides, where leadership is measured not by vision or conviction, but by control, leaving Labour less a political force and more an office trapped in permanent performance reviews. On foreign policy, he imitates rather than leads, turning international summits into costume events where he recycles talking points from the latest Western memo, producing diplomacy by press release and strategy by hashtag. Britain under Starmer isn't being led, it's administered by a middle manager convinced he's excelling. Which is why Peterson, who insists leadership requires responsibility and purpose, would likely call him ambition without direction, a man chasing public approval like a dog chasing a ball. Even on issues where clarity should be simple, housing, education, climate, Starmer cloaks everything in caution. Housing reforms buried in bureaucracy, education plans drowned in metrics, climate pledges phrased to offend no one, especially oil donors or suburban voters, all policy built not on courage or principle, but risk avoidance masquerading as competence.
The actual desire to tar anyone who has, as I say, not got a voice and is wanting to make their voice heard as a violent far-right neo-Nazi seems to me to be a big error by Keir Starmer and others. Because, if you can't say, we recognize your deep concerns about some things that have happened, including mass stabbings, terrorism, and much more. We understand your deep concerns, and we are going to try to get onto this and on top of this. But there is no excuse to turn out on the streets and be violent against your Muslim brothers and sisters and neighbours or any.
Starmer has reduced leadership to a bowl of bland porridge, predictable, hollow, offering no momentum or conviction. Only a checklist of safe talking points posing as beliefs. Britain doesn't need a cautious administrator. It needs a leader with a clear plan, firm principles, and genuine passion. Peterson didn't merely challenge Starmer's ideas, he revealed that beneath the polished image and rehearsed delivery, there's nothing solid holding it together. This unravelling happens as the country faces real crises, a strained health system, a spiralling housing market, and a generation anxious about its future. Yet Starmer speaks with the emotional force of a dial tone and the energy of damp cardboard, defeating himself by being so vague and safe that he fades into the background like a self-help book written by committee, full of generalities, terrified of specifics, and destined to be forgotten. Britain deserves more than empty management and PR-tested slogans. It needs leadership that inspires confidence, not one that simply manages decline. Peterson's philosophical critique lands hard, exposing a country suffering the consequences of leadership replaced by corporate routine and real conviction swapped for caution, with Starmer embodying what happens when a nation in crisis hires a consultant instead of a prime minister.
Somehow navigate us to a better place, possibly. Is he going to be a transformative prime minister where we all wake up in 2-3 years and think, wow, the Starmer revolution? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's
I hope he
better.
does.
That's better than it might have been. Well, I spent quite a long time working with Democrats in the U.S. and I got very disillusioned about that, partly because they showed zero propensity to draw a line between the moderate Democrats and the radicals.
Then came the moment Peterson's challenge reached number 10. Not with theatrics, but with quiet precision, calmly laying out the facts and dissecting Starmer's leadership like a science lesson. Only this experiment carried a law degree, a powerful office, and a complete lack of backbone. He didn't need insults. Holding up a mirror was enough, rooted in his philosophy that leaders must take responsibility for their actions, something Starmer treats like hazardous material. Whenever crises arise, strikes, NH backlogs, economic setbacks, he hides behind reports, reviews, and delicately worded lessons learned, practicing leadership by avoidance. Peterson's message is simple and brutal. Fix your own life before running a country. A sharp contrast to Starmer's tendency to treat the nation like a group project and hope someone else absorbs the blame. Beneath that lies an even deeper void, a lack of vision, purpose, direction, belief in something greater. Because Starmer runs both his party and the country with roughly the same inspiration as a printer manual.
I suspect what will happen in the UK is the same thing that happened in Canada, which is that the right will split, reform, and reunite, and that would be the best bet. Maybe as a coalition government, I'm not staking my, what would you say? I'm not, no, not on either candidate. I've spoken with Nigel Farage and with Kemi Badenoch, and they're both credible people, and they have to fight it out amongst themselves. But I imagine the right will unite eventually again and hopefully reformed.
While Peterson preaches order, structure, and moral clarity, Starmer retreats into vague optimism and office jargon, as if management speak could substitute for real principles. One uses metaphors to confront chaos and demand responsibility. The other dodges questions about strikes like they're fire-breathing dragons. Peterson insists on coherence. Clean your room, fix your habits, take control, and applies that logic to leadership, arguing a nation must be in order before lecturing the world. Starmer's house, by contrast, isn't merely untidy, it's collapsing, littered with abandoned policies, weak foundations, and air thick with recycled talking points. Where Peterson's ideas form a cathedral of structure, Starmer's leadership feels like a flat-pack cupboard held together with fear and tape, making him not just weak, but the inverse of leadership. A spreadsheet sent to charm school, trained to frown at press conferences while leaving the obvious. Questions unanswered. Courage? Conviction? An authentic voice? Replaced by polished but hollow soundbites, slogan-heavy campaigns, and governance dictated by fear of bad headlines. A condition Peterson would likely call moral weakness. The refusal to stand firm lest donors, media, or the establishment be upset.